The sun beat down fiercely on the dusty village square. A large crowd had gathered, a mixture of anticipation and skepticism hanging thick in the air. The villagers, hardened by years of struggle, stood in clusters, gossiping among themselves. They knew what was about to unfold, and yet they couldn't quite believe it. No one expected what was about to happen. In the center of it all stood the woman, alone, unarmed, and staring down the group of men who had each been carefully chosen for their strength and skill. She was neither tall nor muscled. She didn't possess the brute force that the villagers prized so highly. But her eyes, those eyes held something no one else could match: resolve. The men were ready. They knew what they were supposed to do. They had been instructed to defeat her, one after another. At first, they thought it would be an easy task. A woman challenging them? Ridiculous. But as the first man, a towering figure with broad shoulders and a face full of pride, stepped forward, something shifted in the air. His movements were swift, but there was a hesitation, a doubt, that hung around his every action. The crowd went quiet, waiting for the inevitable. And then, it happened. The man lunged, his fist aimed directly for her face, sure to end the contest in an instant. But in one fluid motion, she ducked, sidestepping him with an ease that took everyone by surprise. The first whisper broke out among the crowd. Was she faster than they thought? The man turned, enraged, and charged again, but she was already gone, her body moving like liquid, slipping past his guard and positioning herself behind him. Before he knew it, she had his arm twisted behind his back, forcing him to the ground. The silence was deafening. The man struggled, but he couldn't break free. He was beaten. And the crowd was left in stunned disbelief. For a moment, no one moved. Then the murmur started, low at first, and then growing louder. They had all seen men far stronger than her go down without so much as a fight. But she? She had outsmarted him. The next man stepped up, his face dark with anger. He was shorter than the first, but no less formidable. With a grunt, he charged. She didn't wait. She met him head-on, moving with the grace of someone who had been trained for this moment. He threw a punch, but she anticipated it, ducking once again. This time, she spun, sweeping his legs out from under him. The man hit the ground hard, his breath knocked out of him. The crowd gasped. How was she doing this? One by one, the men fell. Some tried brute strength, others used speed, but none of them had what she had. Each of their attempts was met with a counter so precise, so quick, that they were left reeling. It wasn't strength that was winning this fight, it was strategy, knowledge, and perhaps most of all, confidence. With every man who failed, the mystery deepened. What kind of woman was this? How did she possess the strength and skill to defeat them all? And why had she chosen to do so? The questions lingered in the air, unanswered and unspoken. The final man, a hulking figure known for his ruthlessness, stepped forward. He cracked his knuckles, his jaw set with determination. If anyone could take her down, it was him. But the moment he moved toward her, he made a fatal mistake. He underestimated her. His approach was predictable, his movements were too heavy, too certain. She didn't hesitate. She lunged, and in a split second, she had his arm locked in a submission hold. The man roared, trying to break free, but it was too late. He was done. She released him, and he fell to the ground, too exhausted to continue. The last man had been defeated. The crowd stood in stunned silence. No one moved. What had just happened? Was this woman some sort of mythical figure, sent to show them all their weaknesses? Or had they misjudged her from the start? And then, the truth began to sink in. She wasn't just any woman. She was something else entirely. The villagers had no idea how to process it. No one had ever seen a display like this before. They had been certain of their victory, yet they had been wrong. So wrong. But as the woman stood there, victorious, her chest heaving with the exertion of the fight, there was something else in her eyes. A sadness, a darkness. The crowd had failed to notice it before, but now, in the midst of her triumph, it was impossible to ignore. This was not the look of someone proud of their victory. No, it was the look of someone burdened, someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear. She turned away from the men, her face grim, and began to walk back toward the edge of the square. No one dared to approach her. No one dared ask her the questions that burned in their minds. What was her story? Why had she done this? And most importantly, why did it feel like this victory was not hers alone? There was something hidden beneath the surface. Something far deeper, far darker than anyone could have imagined. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, the whispers grew louder. The men who had been defeated were helped to their feet, their pride bruised but their bodies intact. They had been bested by a woman who had no business winning. But they would never forget it. And neither would the village. But as for the woman, she disappeared into the distance, leaving behind more questions than answers. She had won the battle, but it was clear, she hadn't come here just to fight. She had come to reveal something else. Something the village was not ready for. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows over the village as the woman disappeared into the surrounding forest. The crowd had long since dispersed, but the air still felt thick with confusion. The men she had defeated sat in stunned silence, nursing their bruises. No one spoke about what had just transpired, but everyone felt it, the weight of something unspoken, something more than just a fight. In the village square, life resumed its usual rhythm. Yet, no one could shake the feeling that everything had changed. Word spread quickly, as it always did in small villages. The details of the woman's strange victory traveled faster than anyone could keep up with. But for all the talk and gossip, one thing remained clear: no one knew who she was or why she had come. Back at her small, secluded cabin on the outskirts of the village, the woman sat alone in the dim light of a flickering candle. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured herself a glass of water. She took a long drink, her eyes staring into the dark space in front of her, lost in thought. Her mind wandered back to the challenge. To the men she had faced. To the moves she had made. Her victory had been swift, almost effortless. And yet, it hadn't felt like a triumph. It had felt like something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. It was as if she had been going through the motions, as if she was moving according to a script that had been written long before she had ever stepped onto the dusty square. She set the glass down with a soft thud and ran a hand over her face, wiping away the sweat that had accumulated during the fight. Her body ached from the exertion, but it was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. She hadn't wanted to hurt anyone. She hadn't wanted to prove anything. But the village had left her no choice. They had forced her hand. As she sat there, she heard a knock at her door. It was quiet at first, tentative, as if the person on the other side wasn't sure whether to disturb her. She hesitated. She wasn't expecting anyone. But then the knock came again, louder this time. "Who is it?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's me," came a familiar voice, deep and weathered. "I need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat. It was Rafi, the village elder, a man who had known her since she was a child. She had been dreading this moment, the moment when someone would come to ask her the questions she didn't have the answers to. With a sigh, she stood up and made her way to the door, opening it slowly. Rafi stood on the other side, his gray beard shadowing a face that was tired from years of leadership and loss. He had always been kind to her, but there was something different in his eyes now. He wasn't here for a friendly visit. He was here for answers. "May I come in?" Rafi asked, his voice gentle but firm. She stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Once the door closed behind them, they both stood in silence for a moment. The weight of the unsaid words hung in the air between them. "Why did you do it?" Rafi asked finally, his eyes searching hers. "Why did you challenge them? Why did you fight those men?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned away, walking toward the small fireplace at the far end of the room. The flames flickered in the hearth, casting warm light on the stone walls, but she felt nothing but cold. I had no choice, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Rafi walked up behind her, his footsteps slow and measured. That's not what I asked. You could have walked away. You could have left the village. But you didn't. You stayed. You fought. Why? She closed her eyes, trying to gather her thoughts. It wasn't that she didn't trust Rafi. She did. But there were things she couldn't explain. Things she didn't even fully understand herself. If she told him the truth, would he believe her? Would anyone? Because I had to, she said finally, her voice cracking. I had to prove that I could. That I wasn't weak. That I wasn't like the others. Rafi's face softened. You've never been weak, my child. I've watched you grow up. I've seen your strength, your courage. But this, he paused, glancing at the empty room around them. This isn't the way. I didn't have a choice, she repeated, turning to face him. The village needed to see it. They needed to know I wasn't someone they could just push around. They needed to see that I wasn't just a woman. I was more than that. Rafi studied her face, his eyes narrowing as he pieced together what she was saying. There's something you're not telling me. What is it? What is really going on? She felt the walls closing in. She had always been able to confide in Rafi, but this was different. This wasn't just about her. This was about a part of her life, a part of her past, that she had kept hidden from everyone. A part of her that even she wasn't ready to face. I can't tell you, Rafi, she said, her voice trembling. Not yet. Not until I know what to do with it. I don't even know what's happening. I don't know why I'm here, why this is happening to me. Rafi looked at her with understanding. He knew better than to push too hard. I can't make you talk, but know this, you don't have to carry this burden alone. Whatever it is, you don't have to keep it hidden. You've always had the strength to face whatever comes your way. You've proven that. But don't carry it alone. She looked up at him, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. Could she really face what was coming? Could she finally reveal the truth she had buried deep inside for so long? I don't know what to do, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I don't know who I am anymore. Rafi reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. You'll figure it out. You always do. But you don't have to do it in the shadows. She nodded, wiping away the tears. I just need time. Rafi nodded slowly. Time. But remember, you're not alone. As Rafi left, the door closing softly behind him, she stood in the silence of the room, her thoughts swirling. The questions she had been running from were now unavoidable. Who was she really? What was it that drove her to take on the village like she had? And what was the secret she had kept hidden for so long? In the days that followed, life in the village resumed its usual pace. But things were different now. The villagers had witnessed the unthinkable, and whispers followed her wherever she went. Some admired her for her strength, while others feared her for it. But the tension that hung in the air could not be ignored. Something had shifted. And the truth, the whole truth, was still out there. Days passed, but the tension in the village remained. People talked behind their doors, casting furtive glances at the woman whenever they saw her in the streets. She could feel the whispers like a weight on her shoulders, but she kept walking, her head held high. She had always been strong. But now, she wasn't sure who she was anymore. The questions that had been festering in her mind for so long, questions she had refused to face, were now impossible to ignore. What had she uncovered about herself during that fight? What did it mean? The uncertainty gnawed at her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something she wasn't ready for. She spent sleepless nights in her cabin, staring into the flickering flames of the hearth, lost in her thoughts. Every crackle of wood, every rustle of the trees outside her window, felt like an omen, an echo of something hidden deep within her past. It was on one such night that she decided to visit the village elder, Rafi, again. She hadn't seen him since their last conversation, and though she was still unsure of whether she was ready to confide in him, the weight of her burden was too much to carry alone. She had to speak to someone, to lay it all out in the open, even if she didn't fully understand it herself. The moon hung high in the sky as she made her way to his home, her footsteps muffled by the soft earth beneath her boots. She knocked softly on his door, the sound echoing into the quiet night. Rafi opened it almost immediately, his expression unreadable, though his tired eyes softened when he saw her. "Come in," he said quietly, stepping aside to allow her entry. She nodded, entering the dimly lit home. The fire in the hearth crackled, casting long shadows across the walls. Rafi motioned for her to sit, and she did so, crossing her legs and folding her hands tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice hesitant. "About what we spoke of last time." Rafi nodded, sitting across from her. "And? I don't know how to explain it," she said, her fingers trembling slightly. "But everything feels wrong. Like I'm not just running from something. I'm running toward it." Rafi didn't interrupt. He simply sat there, watching her with the patient gaze of someone who had seen far more than most people could ever understand. "I've been fighting," she continued, her eyes fixed on the fire. "Fighting to prove something, to show them that I'm not weak, that I'm not like them. But it's not just about that anymore. It's about something else. Something I can't name." Rafi leaned forward, his voice steady. "Tell me what it is you're afraid of." She took a deep breath, her chest tightening. The words felt like they were stuck in her throat, but she pushed through. "There's something in me. Something I've always known was there, but I never wanted to face it. And now it's waking up. And I don't know how to control it." Rafi's expression didn't change, but there was a subtle shift in the air, like the weight of her confession had settled into the room. "You've always known something about yourself, haven't you?" She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "When I was younger, I saw things. Things I shouldn't have been able to see. I could hear people's thoughts sometimes, feel their emotions as if they were my own. I didn't understand it. I thought it was just my imagination. But now, I know it wasn't." Rafi sat back, processing what she had just said. "And you think these abilities are tied to what happened in the village?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But after the fight, everything changed. I felt something inside me, something dark. And now it's growing, and I can't stop it. I don't know if I want to." The room grew still. Rafi's gaze never wavered from her face, his expression one of quiet concern. "This is not something to be taken lightly," he said softly. "You've been carrying this inside you for a long time. But now, it seems as though you've come to a point where you cannot ignore it any longer." She looked down at her hands, her mind racing. "I've been running from it. From what I am. From what's inside me. But now, I think it's time to face it. To know the truth." "Do you truly want to know the truth?" Rafi asked, his voice grave. "Because the truth, once it's known, cannot be undone." She nodded slowly. "I have to. I can't keep living in fear of something I don't understand." Rafi studied her for a long moment before standing up. He walked over to a small cabinet in the corner of the room, retrieving a weathered book. He returned to her, placing it gently in her hands. "This," he said quietly, "is the key." She looked at the book in confusion. It was old, its pages yellowed with age, and the cover was adorned with strange symbols she didn't recognize. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "It's a record," Rafi explained, sitting back down across from her. "A record of your family's history. A history that's been hidden for generations. Your bloodline is not what you think it is." Her heart began to race, the air in the room feeling thick with the weight of his words. "What do you mean?" Rafi looked at her with a mixture of pity and something else, something far darker. "You are not just a woman from this village. You are descended from a line of warriors. But not just any warriors. These were people who could wield power beyond human understanding. And now, that power is waking up in you. She stared at him, unable to comprehend what he was saying. I don't understand. You don't need to understand all of it right now, Rafi said, his voice steady. But you need to know this, the fight you had in the village was no accident. It was the awakening. The first sign that the bloodline's power is stirring within you. And once it fully awakens, there will be no going back. The words sank in like stones, heavy and cold. Her mind was spinning, trying to make sense of everything he had just said. A line of warriors? Power beyond understanding? It felt like a dream, something out of a fantasy story. But there was nothing fantastical about the fear she felt coursing through her veins. Am I supposed to fight it? She asked, her voice shaky. No, Rafi replied softly. You cannot fight it. You must learn to control it. You must learn to embrace it. A chill ran down her spine. How? I will teach you, Rafi said. But be warned, this is not a path for the faint of heart. The truth is far more dangerous than you realize. She looked at the book in her hands, feeling the weight of it. It wasn't just a book. It was the beginning of her journey, a journey that would change everything. I'm ready, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. I have to know. Rafi nodded, as though he had been expecting this response all along. Very well. But understand this, once you step onto this path, there is no turning back. The air between them was heavy, filled with the promise of secrets yet to be revealed. And as she opened the book, she knew her life was about to change forever. The fire flickered low in the hearth, casting long shadows across the room. She could still feel the weight of the book in her hands, its pages thick with secrets, each one waiting to reveal something that would change her life forever. But the more she read, the more her mind swirled with confusion. The history that Rafi had spoken of was unlike anything she had ever imagined. The warriors. The power. It felt surreal, like a dream she couldn't escape. Yet, deep down, something told her it was all real, too real to ignore. Rafi had gone quiet after handing her the book, retreating into his own thoughts. Now, it was just her, the book, and the silence that seemed to stretch for miles around them. She didn't know where to start, where to focus her attention. The words on the pages blurred together, stories of battles long forgotten, of men and women who fought not just with strength but with powers that seemed beyond human comprehension. Powers that now, according to Rafi, were awakening in her. She closed the book with a soft thud, frustration building inside her. Rafi, sensing her confusion, spoke softly. You must understand, the journey you are about to take is not one that can be completed quickly. The power inside you is ancient, and learning to control it will take time. Time? She echoed the word. Her voice barely a whisper. How much time? He looked at her, his eyes grave. You will not be able to run from it any longer. This is not something that can be learned overnight. The path you must walk is one of great danger. You are facing something that has been buried for centuries. I don't know if I can handle it, she confessed, her voice shaking slightly. I'm scared, Rafi. I feel like it's too much for me. What if I lose control? What if the power consumes me instead of the other way around? You will learn to control it, Rafi said firmly, his voice unwavering. You must. The consequences of failing are too great. But you will not do this alone. I will guide you. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was something entirely different. The stakes were no longer just about proving herself to the villagers. It was about survival, her own survival. What do I need to do? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping up her spine. Rafi stood up, walking over to the window, his gaze fixed on the darkening sky outside. You need to face what you fear the most. The words hit her like a blow. What do you mean? Power, when it is awakened, does not always manifest in ways we expect, he said, his voice soft but firm. Sometimes, it brings with it shadows, memories, fears, regrets. You will need to confront them, accept them. Only then can you begin to understand how to wield what's inside you. I don't want to go back, she said quickly. I don't want to face those memories again. They're too painful. You must, Rafi insisted. Running from the past will only make the power inside you stronger. It will consume you. You must confront your darkest fears. Her mind raced, her heart beating faster with each passing second. The memories of her childhood, the pain, the loss, the abandonment, flashed through her mind like images in a nightmare. Could she really face them again? Could she truly confront what she had buried so deep inside her? I don't know if I can do this, she said, shaking her head. I don't think I'm strong enough. You are stronger than you realize, Rafi replied, his tone gentle but filled with conviction. Strength is not about avoiding pain. It's about facing it head-on and refusing to let it control you. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to steady herself. There was no turning back now. She had come too far to stop. Whatever awaited her, she would have to face it. After a long silence, she finally nodded. I'm ready. I'll face it. Rafi smiled, a rare softness in his eyes. Good. Then we begin tomorrow. The next day dawned with a crispness that cut through the stillness of the village. She woke early, her thoughts heavy with anticipation and dread. Today, she would begin her training. Today, she would confront her fears. But she didn't know where to start. Where could you begin when the past is so full of pain, so full of things you've spent your entire life trying to forget? Rafi was waiting for her at the clearing just outside the village. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold. He stood by a large stone, his hands clasped behind his back. When she approached, he didn't speak at first. Instead, he simply motioned for her to stand before him. Do you know what this place is? He asked, his voice calm, but there was an edge to it, a quiet urgency. She shook her head. No. This is where your journey begins, Rafi said, his gaze piercing through her. This is where you will learn to control the power inside you. But before we begin, you must first understand what it is you are dealing with. He stepped aside, and she saw a series of symbols carved into the stone beneath his feet. They were intricate and unfamiliar, but something about them made her stomach twist. These symbols, Rafi continued, are not just decorations. They are the key to unlocking your abilities. They represent the forces of nature, of life and death, of the elements that have shaped the world since the beginning of time. You must learn to connect with them, to understand them. She stepped closer to the stone, her fingers grazing over the cold surface. The symbols seemed to pulse beneath her touch, as if they were alive, reacting to her presence. This is not just about strength, Rafi explained. It's about balance. The power within you is not something to be controlled through force. It's something to be understood. You must learn to harness it, to bring it into harmony with yourself. He pointed to the first symbol. This represents Earth. It is stability, foundation, the strength of the ground beneath your feet. Her hand rested on the symbol, and for a moment, she felt a strange warmth seep into her fingertips. She closed her eyes, allowing the sensation to flow through her. The earth is what keeps you grounded, Rafi continued. Without it, you would be lost. Just as you must learn to ground your power, to not let it consume you. She nodded, pulling her hand away from the stone. Rafi moved to the next symbol, and she followed, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. He explained each symbol, each element, and as he did, she felt a deep connection to them, a pull she couldn't explain. It was as if she had always known them, but had forgotten. And then, they came to the final symbol. This one, Rafi said softly, his voice almost a whisper, represents the spirit. It is the most powerful of them all. The spirit is the source of all power. Without it, nothing else matters. Her eyes locked onto the final symbol, a swirling vortex that seemed to move, to shift with her gaze. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and as soon as they made contact with the symbol, something inside her snapped. The world around her seemed to disappear. She could feel it, something ancient, something vast, awakening within her. It was a force that was beyond her comprehension, and yet, it was hers to command. The power surged through her, overwhelming her senses. She could feel the earth beneath her, the air around her, the fire in her chest. It all came together in a way she had never imagined. She gasped for breath, her body shaking as the power threatened to consume her. It was too much. Too overwhelming. But Rafi's voice cut through the chaos. "Control it," he commanded. "You must control it." She clenched her fists, her body trembling. And slowly, painfully, she began to focus. The world around her settled, and the power began to recede, ebbing back into her, flowing through her in a controlled, measured way. She stood there, breathing heavily, her body aching, but she felt something new. Something powerful. Something she had never known before. "I did it," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. Rafi nodded, a proud glint in his eyes. "You did. But this is only the beginning. You must learn to master it. To make it your own." The world felt different now. Every step she took seemed heavier, as if the very ground beneath her was conscious of her every move. The weight of what she had unlocked pressed against her chest, a constant reminder of the power she now carried. It was no longer just a story, no longer just something that belonged to the past. The power was real, alive, and intertwined with her in ways she couldn't fully understand. Rafi had led her to this remote corner of the village, far from the eyes of the others. He hadn't explained why they were here, he didn't need to. She could feel it in the air, the tension that hung like a storm cloud waiting to break. They stood near an old, crumbling stone wall, covered in ivy and moss. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth. Rafi's face was grim as he turned toward her, his eyes narrowing slightly as though he were weighing something in his mind. "You've come far, but we're not done yet," he said, his voice low and serious. "You're beginning to understand the power, but understanding it is not enough. You must face the final test." Her heart skipped a beat. She had already faced so much. What more could there possibly be? The fire within her chest, she could still feel it, pulsing with power. But with that power came fear. Fear of losing control, of letting it consume her. Rafi seemed to sense her hesitation. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but reassuring. "You are not alone in this," he said quietly. "The spirit that resides within you is ancient. It will guide you, but only if you are willing to trust it." Her breath caught in her throat. The spirit. She had heard him speak of it before, but the idea that something, someone, so ancient could reside within her seemed impossible. How could she trust something she didn't fully understand? And yet, she had no choice. Rafi was right. There was no turning back. She nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm ready." "Good," Rafi said. "Then we begin." He stepped forward and placed his hands on the stone wall. The symbols that had been carved into it years ago seemed to shift under his touch, glowing faintly in the fading light of the afternoon. Her pulse quickened, and she stepped forward, drawn toward the wall as though it were calling to her. "Place your hands on the wall," Rafi instructed. "Feel the power that lies within it." Hesitant at first, she slowly reached out and pressed her palms against the cold stone. The moment her skin made contact, a rush of energy surged through her. It was as though the very earth beneath her was alive, responding to her presence. The power wasn't like before. It wasn't just an external force, it was inside her, connected to her every breath. The more she concentrated, the more she could feel it swirling within her, a great reservoir of energy just waiting to be tapped into. Her heart raced as the force began to pulse in sync with her own. "Focus," Rafi's voice broke through her thoughts. "Feel the flow. Let it become part of you." She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy, the pulse that thrummed beneath her skin. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, louder than ever, but alongside it, there was something else. Something deeper. She could feel the earth around her, the history buried within it, the memories locked in the stones. And then, without warning, everything went dark. She gasped, her hands flying off the wall as she staggered backward, her heart hammering in her chest. The world around her was gone, swallowed by an oppressive darkness. She could hear nothing, no sound, no movement. Just the weight of silence pressing down on her. She struggled to breathe, panic rising in her throat. "Rafi," she called out, her voice trembling. But there was no response. The darkness was absolute, a void that seemed to swallow everything she knew. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of her, shrouded in shadow. It was tall, its features indistinct, but its presence was overwhelming. She could feel its power, its ancient energy radiating from it. "You are not ready," the figure spoke, its voice low and gravelly, like the sound of a storm on the horizon. "I am ready," she shouted, her voice echoing in the void. "I've come this far. I can control it." The figure shook its head. "You misunderstand. You think you can control it. But the power is not meant to be controlled. It is meant to be embraced." "Embraced?" She was shaking now, her knees unsteady beneath her. "What does that mean?" "You are a part of it," the figure replied, its voice growing softer. "It is in you, and it always has been. But you must accept it, not fear it. You must become one with it." The figure raised its hand, and the darkness around them shifted. The stone wall appeared again, the glowing symbols etched into it. She reached for it instinctively, her hands trembling as she pressed them against the cool surface once more. The figure's voice echoed in her mind. "Only when you accept the darkness will you truly understand the light. The power within you is not for you alone. It is a part of something greater." As the words sank in, something inside her clicked. The fear that had gripped her for so long began to recede, replaced by something else. Understanding. Acceptance. She could feel the power inside her again, but this time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a part of her, like it had always been there, waiting for her to realize it. She wasn't just controlling it, she was becoming one with it. The darkness began to lift, and the world around her came back into focus. She was standing before the stone wall again, Rafi by her side, his expression one of quiet approval. "You did it," he said softly. Her breath came in shaky gasps, but the fear had dissipated. She no longer felt overwhelmed by the power, she felt empowered by it. "I understand now," she said, her voice steady. "I have to accept it. I can't fight it anymore." Rafi nodded. "Exactly. You are the vessel through which the power flows. You are its anchor, its guide. But you must never forget that the spirit within you is as much a part of you as your own soul. Respect it, and it will never abandon you." She looked at him, a new sense of determination burning in her chest. "What comes next?" "Now, the real test begins," Rafi said. "You've learned to embrace the power. But there are those who would do anything to control it for themselves." Her heart skipped a beat. "Who?" Rafi's gaze darkened. "Enemies. Ancient enemies who have been waiting for a time like this. You will need to prepare yourself. They will come for you." Her blood ran cold. "What do I need to do?" "You must train harder than ever before. You must learn to defend yourself. But most importantly," he said, pausing for a moment, "you must never lose sight of who you are. The moment you forget your true purpose, the power will consume you." She nodded, her resolve firming within her. The journey ahead was unclear, but she knew one thing for certain, she was ready. The night was silent, save for the rustling of the wind through the trees. It was the kind of stillness that made her feel like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Something big. Something that could change everything. And in a way, it was. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the culmination of everything she had learned, about herself, about the power that flowed through her, and about the dark forces waiting just beyond the horizon. Rafi had been training her relentlessly for weeks. Every day had brought new challenges. Physical endurance. mental focus, mastery of the power within her. And every day, she had grown stronger. Not just in her abilities, but in her understanding of the responsibility that came with them. The power wasn't just something to wield, it was a part of her, something she had to protect, respect, and keep in balance. And now, here she was, standing on the edge of the unknown, ready to face the darkness head-on. Rafi stood beside her, his expression grim, his eyes scanning the night. He had been silent for the last few hours, letting her prepare mentally for what was to come. She could feel the weight of his gaze, but she didn't flinch. She had no time for fear now. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. Ready? No. She wasn't sure anyone could ever truly be ready for what was about to happen. But she had no choice. She nodded, a small but firm movement. "I'm ready," she replied, though the words felt hollow even as they left her lips. Rafi didn't say anything. He simply turned toward the distant trees, his hand motioning for her to follow. They walked in silence, the path ahead dark and uncertain. Each step she took felt like she was getting closer to something inevitable. A destiny she couldn't outrun, no matter how much she wished she could. The forest grew thicker the further they went. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as if the very land itself was holding its breath. She could feel the power within her stir, a quiet hum at the back of her mind, urging her forward. Then, without warning, the forest opened up, revealing a clearing. In the center, a group of figures stood, cloaked in shadows. They were waiting for her. Waiting for this moment. Rafi stopped a few paces behind her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. His touch was steadying, but she could feel the tension in his grip. He knew what was coming. "They've been waiting for you," Rafi said softly. "These are the ones who have been trying to control the power. They'll stop at nothing to take it for themselves." She swallowed hard, her throat dry. The air felt thicker now, charged with something, danger, maybe? Or was it the power that surged within her? "I'm ready," she said again, her voice more confident this time. She took a step forward, not just toward the figures in the clearing, but toward her destiny. As she moved, the figures in the clearing began to shift, revealing themselves. There were 6 of them, tall and imposing, their eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. They were the ones who had been tracking her, the ones who had been watching from the shadows. The ancient enemies Rafi had spoken of. They were here to stop her. To take the power within her for their own. The leader of the group, a woman whose features were partially hidden by the hood of her cloak, stepped forward. Her eyes glowed with a fierce, unnatural intensity. She was the first to speak, her voice cold and filled with malice. "You are a fool to think you can control it," she said, her words like ice. "That power belongs to us. We have waited too long for it to fall into the hands of someone like you." Her words stung, but they didn't break her. She stood tall, unflinching, her gaze unwavering. "You're wrong," she said, her voice steady, though it trembled with the weight of the moment. "The power doesn't belong to anyone. It is a part of me, just as it is a part of the world around us. And I won't let you take it." The woman laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "You think you can stop us? We've spent centuries preparing for this moment. You are nothing compared to us." "I'm everything I need to be," she replied, a fierce spark in her eyes. "And I won't let you control me." The woman's eyes narrowed, and she raised her hand. The air around them seemed to warp, rippling with the power she was unleashing. A force like nothing she had ever felt before surged through the air, sending shockwaves through the ground beneath her. But she was ready. The power inside her roared to life, a wave of energy that erupted from her like a force of nature. She wasn't just reacting to their power, she was commanding it. The world around her seemed to bend and shift with the force of it. Trees cracked and splintered. The ground trembled beneath her feet. And then, in the midst of the chaos, she felt it, the ancient spirit inside her, guiding her, pushing her, urging her forward. With a cry, she focused all her energy into one single burst, releasing it with a strength she didn't even know she had. The blast shot through the air, striking the woman at the center of the group. The force of the impact sent her flying backward, crashing to the ground with a scream. The other figures recoiled, their expressions filled with shock and fear. They had underestimated her. But it wasn't over. One of the others, an older man, his face scarred and twisted with hatred, stepped forward, his hands crackling with dark energy. He was angry, furious at the defeat of their leader. "You think you've won?" he spat. "This is only the beginning. You can't defeat us all." The power inside her surged again, and this time, she didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her eyes glowing with determination. She raised her hands, summoning the energy within her, and the ground beneath them erupted. The man's dark energy collided with hers, a battle of wills, a clash of forces. She could feel the struggle, the weight of the battle, but she didn't back down. She had come too far to fail now. Her power was stronger than ever, and it was no longer just a weapon, it was a part of her. She had accepted it, and now it was her ally. With a final, devastating burst, she shattered his energy, sending him flying backward with a scream of fury. The other figures, now realizing they were outmatched, began to retreat, but she wasn't done yet. She could feel their fear, their desperation, and she knew they would try again. But she wasn't going to let that happen. With one last surge of power, she called forth the full force of the energy within her, a final, explosive wave that sent them scattering into the woods. She didn't follow. She didn't need to. The battle was won. The clearing fell silent once more. Rafi stepped forward, his face a mixture of awe and relief. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with pride. She nodded, her heart still pounding with the remnants of the battle. "I didn't do it alone," she said quietly. "The power wasn't mine to control, it was mine to embrace." Rafi smiled, his expression softening. "That's exactly what I've been trying to teach you. You have the strength within you. You always have." She turned to the trees, her gaze distant. The battle was over, but the journey was far from finished. She had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true strength came not from dominance, but from balance, from acceptance. She had embraced her power, and in doing so, had become something more than she ever thought possible. And now, she was ready for whatever came next. The protagonist faces the last battle, overcoming the ancient enemies who sought to control her power. Through this confrontation, she learns the ultimate lesson: true strength lies in acceptance, balance, and the wisdom to know when to fight and when to let go. This part completes her journey, leaving the audience with a powerful, thought-provoking conclusion. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and comments.